What I wanted to run through this morning was a look at the Regrarians platform and how we use it in the farm planning process. The Regrarians platform was developed a few years ago, thanks to, thanks in large part to PA Yeomans, but also in large part thanks to a group of holistic managers who identified that land planning was a weak link in their process, and accordingly invited me to come and lead a keyline workshop in Orange, I think in 2011. In the preparation for that particular 5-day program, I had a conversation with Ian Chapman, who is a holistic manager and keyline designer, who works at the Orange Institute of TAFE there, and I asked him how he taught keyline, and he said, "Oh, I use the keyline scale of permanence," and I went, "Oh wow, that's been sitting there for 20 years and I hadn't seen it," even though I had taught keyline courses for many years and talked about the scale of permanence. I'd never related it as to being a process of design or a process of planning or a process to lead a training with. So that was quite a pivotal moment, and so I have to thank David and his late father Bruce and that whole team, Ian and late George Gundry and a number of other folks who had the gumption to invite me along to that, because this program would not probably be here without that. So thank you, David. Okay, and we've just got Georgie. Okay. Oh, that's a small problem. Okay, there we go. So I'll go back to that. So, P.A. Yeomans came up with the keyline scale of permanence in 1958 in his second book, The Challenge of Landscape, after writing his first book, which is called the Keyline Plan, or the Australian Keyline Plan. The Challenge of Landscape probably remains my favourite book on keyline, and it's, I think, probably the book that encapsulates the whole concept the best. It's when he's at his most positive and sees a really big future for the concept. When it comes to the other books that he produced, Water for Every Farm is an excellent one, and it deals particularly with the water elements of keyline. The City Forest is where he's looking at integrating keyline into urban environments, and it's a bit of a revisit as well. Water for Every Farm, the yellow book that was produced or released by his son, youngest son, Ken Yeomans in 1993 or 4, I think. That book is a compilation of all of those before, and like his father, he didn't really use an editor that much, so it's a bit hard to follow, but certainly well worth reading and having. More recently, Alan Yeomans wrote a book called Priority 1: Together We Can Beat Global Warming, which is a fairly controversial piece, but doesn't really deal with the matter of the scale of permanence. Other pieces that Yeomans put out were the Habitat Forum piece, which we've got online, and the other book that's released on keyline was The Geographic Basis of Keyline by J. MacDonald Holmes, who at the time was the Professor of Geography at the University of Sydney. We've got Georgie Pavlov, who's on our panel today. He's writing a new book on keyline, which I've seen the shorts, the manuscript for, and it promises to be a fantastic piece for us. When it comes to the Regrarians platform and where we're at with that, most of you will have been familiar and have read through, I'm assuming, the materials that we have there, and the headings, or layers as I call them, starting with climate and ending with energy. Our big reflection compared with Yeomans was, well, Yeomans, when he wrote or first tabled the keyline scale of permanence in 1958, called it the keyline scale of permanence of all things agricultural. He also said, well, you know, he said more or less that this is incomplete. I'm not really sure how this can be applied, or how broad it might be, but it's quite a piece that he was able to develop. And like I said, he didn't really carry that through in his work, and he didn't really carry it through in sort of saying, well, this is how we might have others work with this, or that this is a process, an A to Z process that one would develop. Owen Hablitzel, who did the first keyline training with us in California in 2007, Owen was able to, or continued to work on the scale of permanence in his work, and if you look at some of his materials out there, if you do a search on keyline scale of permanence and Owen's name, you'll see some of his materials. What we saw there was that Owen looked at the way that just one moment, please. So what he did there was looked at, all right, well, the keyline scale of permanence is about the relative permanence of different elements, or different elements in a farm landscape, and looking at how to place an order on the priority of development as much as anything else. What can give us, what changes are easy to make, and what changes what change can happen over time. And this is what Yeomans was able to understand, was and reveal to us that the climate is the most difficult thing to change. Then comes the landscape, and then it takes a lot of effort to change the amount of water that we have in a landscape if we're looking to store it, except when you look at the soil. Building access takes a significant amount of effort and energy. Planting trees takes a fair amount of energy and effort as well. And then we've got buildings. Well, buildings and forestry. Why are they not? Why are buildings not number 5 and number 6? That's because buildings are generally don't last as long as trees, particularly the way people build buildings these days. And so you see that in the landscape everywhere. Then we've got fences. Fences are the next part of the order, and they take a bit to build, though that these days they're taking less and less time because of the advent of electric fencing and advances such as the company KiwiTech have given us. Then we've got soils. Soils take even less time to change, and they take even less time to be destroyed as well, as Yeomans put it. And then you've got economy. Economy is something that can change quite drastically, particularly in this internet era. One's economy can diminish very quickly, but also where you manage things in the right way in the internet era, your economy can turn around, and I think certainly much quicker than you can turn your soil around. And then you've got energy. Energy is an interesting one. Why I've got it at 10 is because the focus of energy from our perspective is the energy that comes from the sun, and and how quick that is, and how we're able to make decisions about using it. Also relates, climate and energy are somewhat similar in that the energy that we bring to a task is varying, and the attitude that we bring to task. That's a climate of the mind thing, but certainly something that for a lot of people is very quick to change. So in this presentation, and this is something I've been working on for a while, is sort of to think about these different layers and how they apply to farm planning, and understanding that what we call the constitutional or framing layers of climate and geography. The reason for that, the climate of regulation is relatively fixed, as many of you will have suffered and found. The climate of the weather that you have, the weather patterns, is pretty well fixed. The climate of a lot of your minds may well be relatively fixed as well, depending on the type of personality that you are, and whether you're an innovator, early adopter, early majority, late majority, or recalcitrant. You're one of those 5 categories of people, so that will affect how quickly your mind's climate is to change. So we also look at the holistic context, which Javan Banakovic will lead us through in the coming weeks. The development of that is somewhat constitutional, and I say that by reckoning of any constitution that's developed is something that's developed over time and with a lot of dedication and advice often. And once it's developed, it then becomes the rules, what we call the rules of the game. It also helps to frame what we're going to do, and you'll see that when we work with Javan to develop your respective holistic contexts, just how important developing that holistic context is, or as Javan calls it, holistic life context, and how important that is to framing what you're going to embark upon with the remaining layers of the program and your farm plan. The geography of your landscape is also relatively constitutional in framing, in that it takes an inordinate amount of energy to adjust where you are, or what your place looks like, or the landscape. And so we put that together as well. So these are those layers that really create the rules of the game. And in the case of the geography, the board game, this is the template that you have to, the place that you have to leap from and work within. I've also broken down further at the infrastructure and development layers. So when we look at climate and geography, we're not really talking about infrastructural development. We're talking about a whole range of other things to consider, or considerations. And in this scenario, what we're looking at is water, access, forestry, buildings, fences, and energy. All of these layers contain within them so that's why I've considered it here as being that these are infrastructure and development based. So with water, we've got all of the different kinds of irrigation and water harvesting and water infiltration infrastructure. We've got with access, we've got the same. With forestry, we've got a whole range of different types of forestry installations and buildings, obviously, and fences. With energy, we're looking at energy storage and generation strategies and infrastructure. Then we've got the management layers. So soil and economy to us are both soil and economy are both layers that we've put in as for management, because these layers are where we're considering more of a management focus as opposed to a development focus or infrastructure focus. I mean, my friend Abe Collins says that the soil aggregate is the landscape's primary infrastructure. and he's correct. However, for most of us, when we look at the soil, we're looking at applying a range of treatments which are in themselves management options, and so that's how we apply it here. Economy. The economy is something that we manage, good, bad, or ugly, and so clearly that's why we've got it in this layer. Now, after I was talking with Javin this week about another matter, and he showed me some of his work in looking at the scale of permanence and the Regrarians platform and variations therein. And it interests me to see that he'd created a pyramid of sorts. And it was interesting to me to see that this is a way of reflecting the way that the platform works in the amount of time and energy that one would put into reflecting on each of these different layers. Now that said, when I look at this, I could think, well, for some people who have already done a lot of work, and some of you in this webinar will be those people where you have spent a lot of work in doing your holistic context. You understand your climate quite well. Your climate doesn't have too many limitations, etc. So when you look at it in the sense of the amount of energy and effort that you're having to put in, from a farm planning perspective, then climate might be relatively small, so that the size of that box would reduce, as it were. The geography as well may have minimal limitations, but you don't have any water. So you're having to spend a lot of time on setting that up, but you do have good roads, so you've got, you get the picture. So what we can look at is that through this platform we have different layers which are going to need different volumes of attention, and with that you'll be wanting to apply that attention, and that's part of what we're looking at through this whole program. So when we look at climate, for example, we're looking at your enterprise, regulations, risk, and the weather. And excuse me. And with that, we're identifying what gets you out of bed in the morning. We're identifying holistic management frameworks for decision making through the development of holistic context formation, which Javin will help us all with. And from that will spring a holistic financial land, cropping and grazing planning processes. And so they'll very much be constitutional and framing to what goes on. And with that, trying to match your enterprise to the human and meteorological climate. So certainly you can adjust your enterprise and infrastructure to overcome some of the meteorological climate issues that you might have, but it takes a lot of energy to do so. A polytunnel or a greenhouse is a really good example of that. Oops, I meant to go back there. Also, trying to match enterprises to humans. As I think it's David Holmgren, my friend, said, some people are animal people, some people are plant people, and then when you further divide into that, you've got people who are wheat people, people who are goat people, people who are sheep people, and so on. It helps to find out who you are in that. We had a client years ago, Bruce Burton, who runs a milking yard farm. He came to some workshops. He just left his job in the city, bought a small farm, and we had three workshops with Daniel Salatin. We brought him out for some trainings, and Daniel went to 3 different clients of ours, and one who was a chicken egg producer, pastured egg producer, another one who was a pastured meat bird producer, and the other was a pastured pig producer. And the workshops were to have Daniel and the clients work through and show how they'd developed their program, and and how you could do something similar. And anyway, this Bruce came along to all three of them. The third one was the pig one on the third day, and he came up to us at lunchtime and said, "Thanks, beautiful lunch," and it was a lovely lunch, nice roast pork, of course, and said, "But I've realised by now that I'm certainly not going to be a pig farmer. Pigs just don't suit me." And this is, that's just an example of where someone who has taken the opportunity to go on and look at the types of enterprises that there are, because there are how many enterprises can you run on one farm? It's quite extraordinary when you list them, but it's really important for you to actually realise what suits you. So that goes forward to your whole team, and trying to work on the team so that everyone is doing the jobs that they love. And part of that is matching personalities to job descriptions and the processes there. Then also understanding the regulatory climate, or as one of our students said, the ecology of government. It's death and taxes and regulations. They're all things that are inevitable, and that's something that we all have to live within with varying levels of impediment. And accordingly, it's something that you really should understand. You can certainly take advantage of a lot when you do understand it. Yes, some regulations are very tough to overcome, but the difficulties in changing them are quite well known, as many of you would understand. And so also we look at the attitude that you bring, and this is, many of you will have probably gathered by now that we're fairly conservative in the way that we suggest projects be planned and developed. We're very naturally quite cautious people, as a lot of people who are on the land are. Even great developments such as Polyface Farm have followed this kind of trajectory where, for example, they don't take on another enterprise until they've mastered the last one. And so when people look at a development like Polyface, they think, oh, well, I'll just go and do all of that myself now, but they don't realise that each of those enterprises have been added on incrementally, pragmatically, strategically, and within a fiscally disciplined framework over 50 years. And we have seen a few instances where people have taken on too much too early, and it's come back to bite them because they haven't achieved a level of relative mastery. So that's climate. It's very, very important, and it's no coincidence that when we look at this program that you're participating in, that we're spending an inordinate amount of time. Well, I shouldn't say inordinate. We're spending a lot of time, the appropriate amount of time, I think, on climate, on the climate layer. Yeah, very important stuff. Geography. Geography is a really important topic. Again, it's one of those constitutional or framing layers, the board game as we call it. And the geography of your landscape places it in a catchment that interacts with all physical elements. It also deals with things like proximity and psychography and a range of other concepts. So when we look at it, we're looking at landform, the components, demography, and proximity. Planning and placement based on geography, topography, and aspects. So we look at understanding, and this will be part of the keyline geography section that Georgie and myself will run you through, where we look at understanding your landscape and what are all of its components, or as they're known as now, all of your landscape elements. So what slopes, what aspects, what geology, what topography aspect that they all have, and breaking them all down. And then the program is then to assign the most appropriate land use within the capability of each of those landscape elements. So we'll go through that. That's what this layer is about. We also look at how how does your geography affect your marketing? Um, I think we've got a couple of people here who are quite extensive. Like the landscapes are thousands and thousands of hectares, but then by virtue of that, those properties are often remote. So how does that how can you manage your marketing when you've got that kind of arrangement with in terms of proximity? A lot of people are trying to get what are known as better terms of trade, and when you're a commodity producer 5 hours from a metropolis, um, the idea of setting up a farmer's market for your wheat crop is kind of difficult. So you've got to look at what effect your geography has on the way that you can get a better term of trade, and how you can shift at least part of your revenue stream from being from where you're a price receiver to a price setter. That's a very important part of this whole project. Understanding the demography and proximity of your market. Well, I spoke about proximity just then, and demography relates to the demographics, so the breakdown of the populations that are around you. And we're in an unheralded era right now of being able to understand a lot of that through the use of the internet, which is fantastic. We'll talk more about that as we go along. Next is water, and so this is one of the development layers. Excuse me. So storage, harvesting, reticulation and treatment. Priority number one with regard to water is infiltration. P.A. Yeomans pointed out that there were 4 different sources of water or categories of water. One is infiltrated rainfall, and that's the biggest amount and the cheapest. And that relates directly to what was at the bottom of his keyline scale of permanent soil. So treat your soil well, have it so that it does infiltrate and so on, and get the ground cover as much as you can across as much of the area, and you will have dealt with, in part, some of the most significant issues to do with water, and that's infiltration and storage in soil. And if you're in areas of the world, which a number of you are, where groundwater resources are becoming more and more limited, then of course infiltration across the board of rainwater is particularly important. Use gravity and pipe wherever possible. We're in this amazing era of plastic pipe, and there's this thing called gravity which keeps us sitting on our chairs right now and stops us from flying around everywhere. So, but it never ceases to amaze me how many people replace fossil energy for gravity. Replace fossil energy when gravity is completely available, and that comes down to where you place objects and elements in your landscape as much as anything else. I see a lot of the time when I drive around that the position of water assets as compared to building assets and other assets across the project are often completely arse about. If you'll excuse my French, you've got tanks that are lower than houses when tanks should be higher than houses, and dams that are way below the points in the landscape where they could be, and so on. And just pipes being put in the wrong places, and just generally people not really thinking about where to put things in an integrated way. And that's part of what we're looking at having you do better by using the Regrarians platform. Understanding volume of how much you need is really important. Understand the volumes of the different qualities of water that you have, because water does have different qualities, and there's different, each different enterprise needs or water use needs a different quality of water. Not all water needs to be absolutely potable, world-class WHO standard water. Some of it can be less than that. Understanding, therefore, the volumes that you have of the different qualities of water is really important. Also, understanding how much water is running through your property, or by your property, and looking at all of the tools to help you with that, and then also understanding volume from the perspective of the control of water and um, how one can deal with that. Because the control of water is obviously something that's a really pivotal part of this layer, as much as so the control of water when it comes to peak storm events and so on. Reuse water as many times as is feasible. That's obviously something that many people will try and do, and it's in most cases it's easier at a domestic level than at a farm level. The reuse of water, but there's so many strategies. People like Art Ludwig and Brad Lancaster in particular have done an amazing job with educating us as to how we can do that. And then that saying from my friend Brock Dolman in California of spreading it, slowing it, and sinking it. How obvious this seems, but how little it's done. And that idea of spreading the energy of the flow of water so that it's not so destructive as it can be, slowing its flow right down, and getting it to infiltrate as much as possible. So that's the corollary of priority number one: 100% ground cover, 100% of the time. When it comes to access, so roads, tracks and lanes are really long-lived features in our landscapes. We've just been in Europe for the last few weeks and got to see yet more features in the landscape that the Romans built and other peoples before then. Roads that were there here in our part of the world, here in central Victoria. There's pathways that the indigenous people used for however many tens of thousands of years, which are now still being used as roads today. So their placement defines our movement and should integrate all of the elements with which these pathways connect. Now, that's something that has not necessarily been done. Roads are not necessarily integrated parts of the landscape. In fact, it's fairly clear that most planning that people do is not necessarily integrated, and that's a really strong part of what we're trying to say here is if you're going to put in these relatively expensive and long-lasting features into your landscape, well then there's a duty upon you, because these things will last longer than you do, to have these things do as many jobs as they can. And this is, when you look at some of the permaculture design principles, each element must perform multiple functions is a really strong permaculture principle. And then another one which comes to mind is each element must be supported by many other elements. So with that, we've got all manner of different ways in which we can do that. A road can be a catchment, for example, and that's a very common thing that we will have. It can define other elements in the landscape that will follow it, and we'll look at that further. So roads, tracks, trails, markets, utilities, and people. When we talk about access, Yeoman's had farm roads, and I found that as with a lot of his terms, they were about all things agricultural. Our platform is a bit broader than that in its scope, and so access seemed a better word to me to use. So when we look at roads, tracks, trails, markets, utilities, and people, well, the roads to trails bits most people would apply, but markets are another thing. Just how good an access do you have to your markets? It's going to be that those roads are what you probably get your goods to those markets. So considering that, that's part of the geography layer as well. Excuse me. Your access to utilities and also to people. So utilities are a really important thing. I mean, it will affect, if we look at the energy utilities, for example, if you don't have the kind of grade of power coming into your property, electricity coming into your property, that's going to limit you in terms of what sort of refrigeration or inventory management you might have. Your limitations as far as internet access and bandwidth are going to be a limitation to your marketing and outreach, and so on, and communications. People are another thing. And I've got people here, but people are definitely part of the climate layer. But I'm talking about access to labour. The success in agriculture is largely dependent on the efficient application of capital and labour to a project, and so when you don't have access to people, that can be a really significant problem. So we like to deal with that, deal with the question at least, and see, all right, well, how can we manage this scenario? And a number of you will have already will have that on your list as being something that's quite a limiting factor. So we want to place access according to topography and to optimize water control and harvesting potential. As many of you will have seen in your time, roads can be well, they are, by virtue of their construction, very high runoff coefficient features in the landscape, and so what we want to do is have them so that they become less of a problem for you. If you've got roads that are already there, then you've got to reconcile the value of them and look at, well, gee, can I improve these, or am I really, if I really got something that's a liability, should I just completely replace it? In some cases, we've had to do that. So taking that view of your roads that you already have and saying, all right, well, should I be budgeting to do something else? And hey, guess what? If I did this, then that's going to mean that I'm actually, all of that water that's currently causing me a problem, I can direct and divert so that that actually solves another problem as far as water supply. So we look at roads in a different way to a lot of people would. So you can probably see from the landscape that we're building here, it's gone from being pretty bare and barren sort of landscape to now we're finally putting something a bit three-dimensional into it, and that's perennial plant, woody plant systems. We've added to that as well, not just in this layer, not just perennial woody plant systems as being a sort of a framing and overarching element in most landscapes, but we've also added into that other elements such as animals. So when we talk about the Regrarians platform, the discussion of animals that we're going to include is in the forestry layer. So what we add here, what we point out here, is that we plant and retain trees, the right trees and shrubs in the right place, in the right layout, in the right configuration. It's important to consider this because, again, a lot of these systems will outlast you and even some of your family members. So it's sort of, and I'd have to say too that a lot of these systems, roads, water features, all of these development features, particularly when we get down to fencing, once we put them in, they really define our movement, and they do for the generations that are to follow that are working with that same pattern. So spending a bit of time, you sort of owe it to yourself and to the future to spend a bit of time in planning, so that you integrate all of these development-based layers, the outputs of that, in the right place as much as you can. And trees are just a great example of that. Trees are expensive, and a lot of producers will be reluctant to plant them as well because of their cost and views around their competition with other production systems, and I get that. So we've got to put all of those sorts of things into the mix when we're deciding what sort of configuration and layout we may have, so that we can get the best out of our landscape by integrating trees with them. And then looking at the animal systems that we have, what are the most appropriate animals for our particular landscape, and for our enterprise. We want to, if we're going to plant trees, ground preparation is really important. So I've sort of said here, well, don't put a $10 tree into a 20-cent hole, and to put a $5 tree into a 20-cent hole. A lot of people do, and they get results that reflect that. And so we think that if you're going to have these things which are going to be partners in your agricultural journey, then you owe it to yourself and to them to do a bit better job in prep. And that's, as many of you would already know, that's a natural outcome of good soil management, is being able to increase the prospects for those trees that you establish to grow and thrive. Look at coppicing species as being the perpetual background of your forestry system. It was great just a couple of days ago. I was able to go out to my wife's property and harvest from a coppice system. So coppicing is where you've got trees that grow back after you cut them down, and having that as a backbone, because that it's like grass. I mean, you just don't know how long those systems will last. They just last and last and last. And so we think that they're a really important part of the giving you the woody biomass that so many places need, particularly those that have cooler climates where you need wood for fuel wood and whatnot, but also for all of the other uses of timber, lumber, that abound from some of these coppicing species. And that can be something that can be that perpetual backbone of biomass supply: posts, poles, sawn timber, dimensioned logs, firewood, etc. You can just get ad infinitum, and it just runs on sunlight and a little bit of labour here and there. And value adding wherever possible. That extends to things like animals wherever possible, processing on farm, trying to have the forest so that it cycles as best as possible, but trying to get it so that nothing leaves the property without some value being added to it, if that's feasible for you. Buildings are the next layer. So we look at buildings are where most of us will have spent most of our money. They're incredibly expense-intensive pieces of infrastructure, and they're often put in the wrong place. They're often I'm sitting in a house at the moment that was built in 1890. We're in a climate that gets to nearly 120 degrees or 45, 46 degrees centigrade, 120 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, and gets down to -5 centigrade, 25, 26 degrees Fahrenheit in winter. And it's not designed for either of them. It has about a month a year where it's actually a habitable structure, because no one actually considered back then that taking a design from the UK, where even there it wasn't suitable, over to this part of the world was a reasonable thing to do. So these days, obviously, we have a lot more understanding about energy efficiency, so that's a really important thing, but also about where you place buildings, and consider further to that the development of the portable building. So we look at homes, sheds, portable buildings in this layer, and understand that from the outset that buildings are degenerative infrastructure and highly expensive degenerative infrastructure. And so that sort of, when you consider that in your planning, then you should be saying, all right, well, what can I do to make buildings less expensive and more habitable? Have I been as expansive in my outlook there, and as resourceful in my outlook? Am I building buildings way too big? The buildings of today, especially homes, are increasingly large, and therefore require increasingly large investment to build, and then to maintain, and then to replace, and to power. So you know, are we putting ourselves, are we putting a bit of a noose around our neck by providing an ensuite in every room, every bedroom, in having every room become a hotel-sized, a five-star hotel-sized room, and so on? Is that the way? Is that the best way to go? Maybe for you, that's your context. If you want that sort of five-star living, for other people, they're going tiny, and realizing that they spend actually more time outside than they do inside. So just make the building that actually fits with what your needs are, as opposed to what your status building might suggest otherwise. So there's those sorts of things to put in the thinking mix there. Put buildings on wheels and make them multifunctional. A lot of people are doing that kind of thing, and that's people, especially like Joel Salatin, have been strong for understanding that. And also fitting buildings within the whole layout, and how are we putting buildings in the right layout, in the right position? And many of you will already have buildings on your sites, and you just have to work with that until you come time maybe to need to change a building or upgrade it. And then you can say, all right, well, maybe I'll put the next one in a different spot. But at least have a look at the integrated way in which buildings are placed, or see how those buildings are, or fit buildings into the whole layout so that they are a lot more integrated. Build for now, but place for tomorrow. So that's thinking about how things change over time, and how that all works. And then retrofitting to increase function, amenity, and energy efficiency. Because if you do have existing buildings, there's some great strategies out there now for how to increase a building's relative levels of energy efficiency and amenity and function. And so sometimes that's a much more efficient way of using your capital than to go and build something new. Although that is also sometimes the best way to go about it. Fencing. What we look at here with the time, a lot of people, a lot of plans that I do will have a fairly big concentration of time on developing fencing layouts. A lot of designs I do, I think, my main focus is, all right, well, developing a holistic context and enterprise plans, building some maps of the site, getting the water infrastructure sorted in terms of, all right, well, we've got an adequate water supply and then a piped network, and then don't worry about buildings, don't worry about trees, don't worry about, maybe do a road or two, but don't worry about the trees or the building stuff. That's already pretty well taken care of. But worry about the fences, because my fences are not either, I don't have any, or I don't have them, I don't have what I need for my particular production system, or I, excuse me for just a moment. Sorry about that. I just had a log move that didn't need to. Yeah, so looking at where those fences are placed and how they and what they're made of. A lot of people, again, put too much energy into the types of fences that they put, especially internal fences, and so looking at how those systems will be. So as I've put here, fence to so we're looking at permanent fencing, electric fencing, living fences in some cases, and I think an emerging number of people are looking at how they might integrate some living fences into their landscapes. There's still a place for that even in Western systems, I think. Yards and temporary fencing. So our sort of policies, if you like, are looking at fencing to topography, fencing using electricity as much as possible, and fence knowing it's 2016, not 1000 BC. And what I mean by that is a lot of people are still fencing like it's 1000 BC or that it's 1900 or even 1950. When the reality is that today we have some amazing technologies out there, companies like Kiwi Tech and others that have been developed, and they can help us to really efficiently and cost effectively install fences that can then work for us to both control the livestock that we have inside of our property, but also the livestock that are from the outside. So soils are the next thing. They're the lowest on the keyline scale of permanence for the reason that they're very easily destroyed and fortunately easily created. And by created, meaning that we convert dead subsoil into living soil. And there's been any number of people who've worked to help us to understand that better. So with that, our primary policy from the perspective of this program is to make topsoil formation the number one outcome of all human habitation, and so that includes for you guys. When we look at the holistic management or the set of holistic management ecosystem processes and understanding those, the first thing that we do is we look at the soil. And when we look at our soil, we can understand so much of what's going on with the rest of our landscape and our economy to an extent. So it's something we do put a fair bit of energy and effort into. We'll have Graham Hand with us for a session on site analysis. I can't remember which week it is now, but Graham will work with us to help us understand through his own development of charts of landscape function, so that you can really clearly get the picture of where your land is at. And then we'll go on to look at what sort of strategies and treatments might we put in place to help us plan for our soils to improve, and not just improve but to thrive. And therefore, and I have to say that from our perspective, in all of our looking at all of the systems that we've got, holistic management planned grazing has become our, as you might say, our operating system for the farm. And so we'll be looking at that and recommending that that's something you do too. Even if you're on a small scale, this approach has a huge amount of merit in helping you to do things at the right time, at the right place, for the right reason. Whether that's grazing or crops, if you're not happy, if you don't have any animals and don't intend on having any animals, and what sort of rotation systems do you have? Have you actually forecast all of the things that are coming your way in an average season across your site? So there's that sort of planning that we'll put in, and that's within the application of the holistic process there. But also, there's practical concerns about minerals. A lot of sites are minerals and soil fertility, and so how do we approach that? How much money do we spend? Who do we trust? Which agricultural god do we follow? Because there's any number of opinions and beliefs and processes and people to follow as far as mineral therapies and or mineral treatments and fertility treatments for soil. So helping to sort of wade our way through that and is really important part of the planning process. Yeah. Let's just try and keep things a bit more simple because people can make things ridiculously complicated for themselves when, of course, the soil is complex, but it doesn't mean that we need to apply really complex ways of getting it to work better. Economy, as we said earlier, it's this layer is where it is because it's never been easy to analyse or access markets. So what we're particularly with the advent of the internet, which we're enjoying to a varying degrees now. I can see a couple of people have had to drop out because their sound quality is bad. So fortunately we are recording, so they'll be able to watch it later, hopefully. But at the very least we'll be able to transact through the week. Our policy, if you like, when it comes to the application of the Regrarians platform to farm planning is to try and look at the economy layers where we do an economic analysis of ourselves, of our enterprises, and look at strategies for improving our work there, and also what kind of value chain, what part of the value chain are we involved with? Are we just, shouldn't say just, are we only doing production? That's really what defines the enterprise of most farmers or producers, as we call them in Australia, is that they are producers. But are you processing? Are you distributing? Do you have are you managing your inventory? You know, what parts of or are you selling? You know, what parts of the value chain are you actually involved with, and how many do you want to be a part of? So we look at embracing localization as a primary economy. I'd say that's our context and our agenda. That you can take or like it. You know, a lot of people will continue to embrace globalization as the primary economy, which it is. That's predicated on cheap fuel is another matter, and relatively cheap energy. So these are things that we want to have some strategy and open conversation about, so that we're not caught when things happen that are out of our control. So having a look at that, producing what you like to eat, as I mentioned before, is a very important thing. So producing the types of products that align with you, and that you actually like to produce. Very important to do. So that sort of ties in with that climate strategy of trying to do things that we actually love doing and being around organisms that we like to be around. There's no point being a sheep farmer if you hate sheep, although there are any number of those people out there. Even if you only hate sheep occasionally, that's probably okay if you're a sheep farmer. Just like some people hate carrots from time to time. Understand the difference between a growth model and a non-growth model. This is something that we bring in the conversation of saying, all right, well, have you thought about what happens when you have continued growth from the spectre of that as you grow, then the needs upon yourself rise, even with delegation. You know, tax liabilities changed, the amount of time that you're working with accountants changed, the amount of regulations changed. You know, all of these things. There's a lot that goes. You know, growing is not all that it might be crack up to be. So a lot of people are now looking at a non-growth model or no-growth model, where they're saying, all right, well, I've worked out how much I actually need, and so what I'm going to try and do is create a enterprise that matches that need. And allows me to still feed my future resource base that I'm developing and that I've defined in my holistic context, which we'll come to in the coming weeks. So my wife Lisa pointed out years ago that we should own it through our consumption patterns as well, because everyone will continue to be a consumer of some degree, and to try and think about only supporting enterprises that have the health of the planet, its people and all its species as their main priority. And again, that's our agenda. It's for you to take or leave that. But we think that if we're going to truly be regenerative as a species and as producers, then we need to be a bit more serious about that and really lift our game. As far as who we support and why we support them, and consider their effects on others, including other species and the landscape and whatnot. Otherwise, we're really you know, we're really being dishonest to ourselves. So we think that's a really important part of planning is integrity, and bringing that integrity to what you're doing and making it real, because it is. And managing your economy like a perennial species, because you are. A lot of people manage their economy like they're an annual. I'm certainly not going to say I haven't done that, and in some ways continue to, but you know, we're also opportunistic organisms, and sometimes there's opportunities that are there that you take. Sometimes things happen that force you to become a bit more like an annual, to use that analog. But otherwise, you should always have some sort of plan for the future, so that you and your offspring will continue to be perennial. What sort of strategies are you doing there to really set those things in place? You know, how do you behave with your family and others around you? What sort of forms of capital in terms of social capital are you building? And finally, as I just clock over the hour, looking at energy and the kinds of energy that we have. Most of them, except for, you know, nuclear energy, originates from the sun. Nothing is as fleeting as a photon of light. I mean, it's there and it's gone, and it is so powerful in how it can. You see this all of the time in systems where you've got bleached landscapes in summer where there's been no rain, and you can see perennial vegetation that's here and there, and you think, wow, people just manage things a bit differently, then what we'd see is more green and less brown, just by virtue, in many cases, of how people have managed landscapes. And wherever we see green vegetation, living vegetation, we know that the energy of the sun is being transferred into the development of biomass, both within the plants themselves and into the soils, which is very important, and all those byproducts that come from that. So our policies here, or our considerations, are photosynthesis, how to extend that over the longest period possible. Generation, so what sort of generation systems are we looking at, and what sort of storage systems are we looking at, and making that shift to more regenerative energy systems that sequester more carbon than they exhaust. Excuse me. I'd say there that you know, no matter what you believe about climate change or any of that sort of thing, what is immutable is that there's a declining amount of carbon, a volume of carbon in a vegetative state and in a soil carbon state. That, you know, the carbon that is in the carbon cycle has been shifted from some of these really vital places, and we need to get a lot more back into those places. So we're burning up all of this fossil carbon, whilst at the same time as removing all of this soil carbon and destroying all of this perennial vegetative carbon, and accordingly that's causing us some resource concerns, among other things, as well as affecting climate. So it's really important that, again, we have some honesty about the energy invested for energy returned when we're considering the various types of energy generation and storage systems that are out there. Just because Elon Musk says that it's the way to go doesn't necessarily. I mean, this is the same guy who says we should colonize Mars. I mean, you know, how much energy is invested in a Tesla car or a Tesla battery versus having other forms of energy generation, or having just an old efficient car that you can repair, that doesn't rely on a grid, and so on. So they're broad questions, and they're things that we would like people to reflect upon and invite people on. A lot of the time when we're looking at this particular layer, we're looking at, all right, what machinery do you have? And how efficient is that? What that includes your vehicles, tractors, other forms of machinery that energy uses. So that's that one practical level. Another level is that we're looking at, you know, how efficiently are you consuming energy right now, and what can you do about that? And then finally, we're saying to people, look, it's probable that we will have some energy crises in the future, that the amount of cheap energy that we currently have, cheap fossil-based energy that we currently have, will not be as cheap and as available as it is right now. When that time comes, you know, there's all sorts of predictions about that. So at least bring into your conversation some sort of strategic, pragmatic and incremental conversation how we might address that, so that we do have some level of preparation, and that as technologies emerge or are built or come back, that we look at those and we look at how they can be part of our energy mix, and just keep an eye on it. Make sure, and where we're getting to here is that through the use of this platform is that you consider things that you may not otherwise consider them, and you consider them in the whole, whole with a W, and that you be hopeful about that, that you bring some hope and energy. I mean, you wouldn't have invested in this program unless you had some hope. So that's what we're looking at here. So with that, I'm going to put it over to you to ask some questions. Now, if I can just thank you, Jenny. So if anyone wants to so if anyone wants to ask any question now, I did have a technical issue that I just need to make people aware of this morning. Quite a significant one that came about halfway through the program, a quarter of the way through the program, in that this particular subscription I have with GoToMeeting was undersubscribed. Because of the we got about 25% of our bookings in the last 4 days, and I had overlooked upgrading the account, so a number of people who should have been able to be on this call, on this webinar, have not been able to. So so I'll have to make up for that, but and I'll certainly have to upgrade the subscription. So that's no drama for next time. So if anyone's got any questions, just go for it. We'll get them out there. Okay, so we've got our first one from Stefano Creatini. What I'll do is I'll just get out of here. Just bear with me for one moment, and I'll just get us organised here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a blank screen and put your questions into that blank screen, so that that's recorded. So I have I'll just get rid of that, and get the questions. Here we go. Okay, here we are. So I have a specific farm question regarding flood irrigation. Is that a question for Water Week? Well, we actually don't actually have a Water Week, and this is kind of similar to this question that Pyung asked earlier about keyline design, about swales and all of that sort of thing. The way this program is rolling is that we're trying to have it so that you understand farm planning and the Regrarians farm planning process, that you develop a strong holistic context that will give you, that will point you in the right direction about what questions you really need to understand. Secondly is that we want you to understand your landscape really well, so you can sort of get this nexus bit of understanding between your about what you want to achieve and what your landscape can allow you to achieve, and what investments you'd need to make. And part of that would be flood irrigation part of that? But by all means, if you want to ask that question now, then we can do that, or we can reserve the question during the week where I can give, I and others can give it some full attention with attachments and all of that sort of thing. So next one. Will these PowerPoints, okay, next one, I'll just get rid of that. Will these PowerPoint presentations be available for us to review? Yes, I should have done that this morning. In fact, I saw it there and I was going to upload it and got distracted with other things, so like late people coming on board. So yes, definitely Justin Bramhall, that will definitely happen. In fact, as I think I pointed out to you the other day, I'll just go back to there. If you should have, and if I haven't shared this with you, I will. All of you will have got access. I'll just double check this. I'll just get you the link now, just so that you've got it. Can edit. We've got this online reference here, which you already have access to, Justin, having done the Rex last year. Is we've got the Regrarians platform there, and all of those layers, and in that, if I just go back to it, you'll see that there's the Rex presentations. And so this is a list, and I'll put I think I'll probably put it in the Rex 10-week program. I'll make a folder in there, which I'll, yeah. So for example here, yeah, no, I won't have to make a folder. What I'll do is I'll just bang each presentation in each week's folder. That'll be the best place to do it. But yeah, absolutely. Good question, thank you. It would be good to see me. Be good to see me. Yeah, you can see me and my. I'm not. Thank you, Griffin. Interesting point. I personally, I don't know if it's my vanity, which I probably have too much of, but I personally don't like the sight of myself. So I don't know that anybody else would like the sight of me either. So that being the case, I might just leave my webcam closed. So thank you for that, Griff. And welcome. What's the first step in understanding water volume, or how do I calculate, decide how much water volume I need? That's a great question. Again, I'd probably, sorry to sort of push that over, but I would suggest that we answer that through the week, because I'll be able to in the forums during the week. So if you can ask that during the week, that would be fantastic. Very simple though, in very simple terms, we use water audits to do this. Yeah, I won't go there because I'll get distracted, but there's lots of different auditing that we do in terms of trying to calculate how much water you do need, and we'll help you with that, and we have a ton of resources to be able to help you with that. So no problem there, Kim. Thank you for your question. Sorry, I wasn't able to give you the right answer. Right, so next question. And this one's from Marco. Thank you, Marco. Thanks and welcome. Would you recommend organising the information gathered via the scale of permanence framework? Yeah, it's really interesting. If I could just show you a bit of an insight into my world and my application of the Regrarians platform, just so you can see. So for example, this is a little hard drive I carry around with me, and I've got a number of, I just put the numbers on there so I can find everything, but you'll see that the first the first 10 slides folders that I've got are according to the platform, and so within them I've got the categories. There's stuff that I just have outside of there because it helps me file things. But yeah, I use the Regrarians platform as a cataloging tool. It's my little private Dewey system. I've even got in my library, I've got my books, not in the Dewey system, but in the Regrarians platform framework. So yeah, I've been pretty happy with that. Thanks for that. Oh, John Owens, thank you. Just like to applaud your introduction. Oh, it's very kind of you. I can hear your applaud from wherever you are. So thank you for that. Next question. This is from Aljaz. I think that's how you pronounce your name, Aljaz, I hope. It's always important to pronounce people's names properly. It's a form of respect, which we take quite importantly. And yeah, we would love to be able to make sure that we pronounce your names properly. What's the copyright issue if we want to translate the Regrarians platform in our own language and teach to others? The Regrarians platform is effectively open source. I have trademarked the term, just as I've trademarked Regrarians, but it's an open platform. So if you want to take it, obviously we'd like to work with you so that you do it as best as you can. So if you can communicate with us on what your plans are, then that would be great. We keep it all in the tent, and then we keep the integrity of the information at its highest level. That's why we did copyright and trademark, because we wanted to make sure that we had some say in how materials were disseminated. So yeah, but we'd be very happy to help and work with you. So thank you for the question there, Aljaz. Yeah, okay, next one. So next question, and this is from Sai. I think it's Sai, S-A-I. Thank you for coming. Love the broad intro into the Regrarians platform. Is there going to be a reading list for each class? Yes, there is. If I just go to the website for a minute, you'll see, and if you haven't got all of this as yet, then just let us know. Let Smillian and I know, because we'll work with you to have it so that you get the access that you have paid for. So go to My Courses. I think most of you will have done this by now. And go to Active Courses, I think. Is it the one? No, Start a Course. There we are. My own course, and I don't even have an active course. Okay, so anyway, go to there and you'll see that there's 19 lessons. What you need to do is, so go to using the Regrarians platform. So each week, as you complete each week, Smillian will make them available, and you'll see that he'll make them available in the week before. This was opened up last week when we had the orientation session. And you'll see that there's a list of recommended readings that we have. Yeah, so yes, each and every week there is that. So thank you for the question, Si. Okay, next one. And this one is from Stefano again. So thank you, Stefano. Where do we put the questions for the week? Slack is one place. I have, as most of you will know already, I'm new to Slack, so I'll be interested to see how that works. We're looking to use that instead of a forum or a Facebook group. As I understand, a number of people here and others are very supportive of that, so we'll see how that rolls. If it doesn't work, I'm quite happy to just go and create a Facebook group for us. But otherwise, at the bottom of the I can't do it right now, but what you'll see is that at the bottom of each of these sections each week, there's the space to put questions and then have them answered by everyone who's here, who's a part of this, and so we'll do it in there. But yeah, so this week will be the big learning week for us all to understand how to interact with each other as effectively as we can. Yeah, so just a little patience with us as we run this whole set of platforms for the first time. We're using the Sensei plugin in WordPress. It's not something we've run before, but it's a lot of people have, and it's very successful. So we'll be looking to see how that all runs. But that's how we're looking to do that, Stefano. So next one. I'll just get this next question up. I think this works all right where we're putting it all in here. Hi Darren, thanks for all of that. A question regarding the need for farm visits during the duration of the course. We live 2 hours away. How much time will we have to? Yeah. So the day of the week. I'll just get there. We have a week where we're doing site analysis. So I'll just go back to there. And just so I'm accurate. So with that, Mike, what you'll do, it's week 7. So week 7, whatever date that is, just check the program times on the Google Drive for that. But that week is the week that you will, so we'll have the webinar that will guide you, and then excuse me, they'll guide you and give you some resources to go and check things out. If for any reason you can't make it that week, because there's life goes on, then let us know and we'll see what we can do about getting you some of the resources. Remember too that in the chapter 2 of the Regrarians handbook, which you all should have a copy of or a link of, I'll just open that up now. There is a section, I'll just open that up here. There is a section on site analysis, so that I've done. So in fact, we have a whole subsection in the book that's site analysis, and so have a look through that, and that will help you to understand how to go about analysing your site if you can't do it during the week that we're. Also, if you need to do it in the weeks before, we have that that week where it's our focus. If that makes sense. Okay. Thank you. Okay, this one's from Morad. Thank you, Morad. Good to have you on board, mate. Morad did Rex with us in France last year, one of the 2 at ComSword, so welcome back. What is the prerequisite in terms of a map that we need to come with? We've got a section where we're just looking at, again, I'll go back to the program. We've got week 4 where we're doing farm map creation, so you've got a bit of time between now and then to see what topographic mapping you've got available. I know your project's in Morocco, and the government topographic mapping is a little bit iffy and hard to come by. I've been able to locate a bit of stuff, so you might have to do a bit of digging there, Morad. But otherwise, we're using Google Earth. Again, if you're in Morocco, I know that the king doesn't like Google Earth. So, but if you're off-site or using as many people would use in Morocco, they might find a friend who's off Morocco, where you're not geo-blocked from using Google Earth. But that's what we're going to use there. And I'm sure we'll be able to work something out between us and the whole team. So thanks for that question, Morad. Okay. How would you say your scale of permanence differs to that of Dave Jackie's, and why? Thank you, Taj, and welcome back to you. You did a PDC with us, our last ever PDC that we'll do in 2014. I have to. I'll just bear with me. I'll go and have a look at Dave's because I think not in here. I think I listed it. I think I did in the book when I was looking at the scales of permanence that others had developed, and I hope I did because Dave's a good fellow and does great work, and particularly in his written work. I haven't seen much of his other work, but in any case, I thought I did reflect on. Here we are. Here we go. So I do have it. So great question, one that I can get to directly. So here's the four that or the three others that I've sort of seen and are probably out there in the most use. One is the Yeoman scale of permanence, which is there. In Permaculture 1, David Holmgren and Bill Mollison, when they wrote that book, they also, as both of them were mentored by P.A. Yeomans and looked up to him as a figure. And Yeoman's work was very important in the development of the permaculture concept in its early stages, by both of their acknowledgement. You can see there that they included, they said plant systems as opposed to trees, and microclimates entered in above buildings. So, and then when we come to Dave Jackie and Eric Toensmeyer, their system has, well, it doesn't have any reference to energy, doesn't have any reference to economy per se. So there are some variations there. They've got legal issues being at number 5. I think, we've got legal in legal. I'll put legal. I'll understand their reference of legal as being regulatory issues. I would put them at being in climate in number 1, because to change the law is a hard thing. It's a very hard thing to change. It takes a lot of effort and energy. So, yeah, therein lies. The zones of use. I'd have to read into what they were meaning there, but it's something again that when I look at the scale of permanence checklist that they put in that book, unlike what we've done or pretty well anyone else has done, it doesn't, like the big thing about the platform for us is that it categorizes our whole program, whether it's our training or our planning work, and it is our process. We start at number 1 and we go through to number 10, and we try and order the way that we do things according to this platform, which I hope will become more and more clear as the weeks go on. When if we're looking at the water layer, for example, then it's kind of like the permaculture. Just find it for you. The permaculture system of using a sector analysis. Sector analysis, as it often is focused on what we're looking at here. Just for those of you who don't know, we're looking at different. We're looking at a house in this case, and then we're looking at all of the wild energies that are flowing through a site at any given time, and things like views and whatnot. All of these sectors of influence. Now, the application of the Regrarians platform is kind of similar to the application of sector analysis. You will apply the sector analysis to each and every element of the system that you're doing. It's not just focused on the house. So if you build, for example, a dam, you'll do a sector analysis on that dam. If you build a shelter belt, you'll do a sector down. If you follow what I mean. So the Regrarians platform is kind of similar in that if you're looking at building a dam, I'll just go back to where we were there. If you're looking at building a dam, then you'll look at the regulations. So you'll apply so it's a dam is a water layer, is in the water layer, but you'll also look at the climate layer, so particularly the regulations for doing so. Is there enough rain, blah, blah. So you've got those. The geography will tell you if it's a good spot or not. Do I have the right soil type for building that structure? Right geology? How does it fit in with access? Do I need it? How is forestry integrated in with that dam? How does it link in with any buildings from a gravity perspective? Does it need to be fenced? What's its effect on soil and the soil management that'll come from that? How does it work with our economy? And what sort of energy resources? So you follow what I mean there? That what you're looking at is at any time that you're doing anything, you can apply the platform through the whole lot, and then you'll have considered most things, because that's half the battle that we have. Is that we don't consider enough. And I don't want us to have paralysis by analysis, but we certainly want to have a scenario where we are being due diligent and we're applying good, solid process to and respect to the application of capital, whether it's our own or our others, in setting up these systems, because it is important. It's really clear. We all know when we've done things and we've done them poorly how much it costs us. Later on. So yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. And I'm sure if we wish, we can certainly dive. I'd have to go and read Dave and Eric's book again so that I could see what further references they made, or whether it was just another list, because that book is a book of many, many lists and tables. So thank you for that question. All right, next one, and this one is from Marco. So thank you, Marco. Would you recommend organising? Oh, yep. So, yep, I think we already did that. So thank you for that. But yes. Next question. My project has multiple members participating. Is it possible? Yes, it is. It is possible for all project managers, members. So yes, so if you want to, if you haven't already, Justin, it should have been already dealt with, but if you can send me an email, send Smillian and myself an email, and we'll take that from there, so that in the subsequent sessions you all have the access that you should have. Okay. Will there be any recommended reading during the course and as it evolves? Yes, I think I answered that before, Elena, so that's all taken care of. Oops. And the next one. Oops, I'll open that. Are those recordings available for any people who have participated in a REX before? My associate and I participated in, sorry, who's this one? This is from Martin, pardon me, Martin. I said, and he didn't subscribe to the online one. Can he view the recordings as I'm working on a project with him? Well, if you're working on a project together, then absolutely, that's fine. I mean, it's really nice that people are asking for permission. And I really appreciate that, because that shows that you're respectful and you have integrity. Certainly, we appreciate that if you're working on a project together, then we're here to make that project be as good as it can in any way we can. So next question. So thanks for that, Martin, and welcome back. Okay, next one. This one's from Frederick, who also did the Moroccan Rex. Welcome, Frederick. Turning around degrading established olive and citrus groves here in Morocco to regen mode is a big challenge for agriculture. At a time, state still pushes a no future to expand on huge tracts of land. What would be your main angles to start doing just that? The Moroccan question often, it's a Moroccan question. You know, the climate of Morocco is incredible in that it's it's a very truly Mediterranean climate. It's hemmed in by the Atlas and all that, that sort of protect it from the rigors of the Sahara, as the neighbouring countries do along the North African coast. Um, I think its biggest issue is the climate of the mind of the people who are in control of landscapes, and that's everyone from the king down. I see that Morocco wants to regenerate. There's no doubt about that, but it's constantly held back from doing so by the management of people. Um, Whether that's, as I say, that's from the top down. I'd love to. I mean, if there's not many absolute monarchies left in the world, and some people say, "Oh, what if I was king? What would I do?" Well, if I was the king of Morocco, there's a few things I'd get up to, because he won't have much of a country to be a king of if he doesn't get his arse into gear. So, when it comes to establishing citrus and olive groves, I think that the biggest problem with Morocco right now is the unregulated access of livestock to landscapes, and so big thing I would be looking at there is to try and open up, try and open up, try and manage that. And people in Morocco do that. You can see, as we saw at the Rex in Morocco last year, there's a lot of people use living fencing and living fences to protect their assets, and I'd certainly be looking at doing that. But otherwise, the most important thing, is with everywhere, is to get that raindrop infiltrated, get that soil covered and get that raindrop infiltrated. But it's really hard to keep doing that when in the non-growing season you've got animals wandering around unmanaged, eating the mulch, eating the litter, so that you don't have any ground cover at all. You can be the best land manager in the world, and if you've got unmanaged livestock running all over the place, well, then eating all of the mulch that lays on the litter that lays on the ground, it's a tough gig. So no easy answers there, mate. But and again, I think I would encourage us to continue that conversation through the weeks and see what angles we all can come to as we support each other through this program. Next question from Per is: could you talk a bit about the Slack forum? Do we address questions to someone in particular? Yeah, we're gonna learn that a bit this week. I think I haven't been a Slack user. It was recommended to me by Smillian, and there was a number of other people, including some on this webinar now, who are users of it. So I'll be kind of guided a bit by them as to its virtues and its use. Like I said, if it starts to be obvious that it's too difficult, then it's got to be easy enough for me to use, and if it's easy enough for me to use, Pierre, pardon me, thank you, I just noticed that, Pierre. If I can use it, then anyone should be able to use it pretty well. I'll be the judge of that. So let's see how it plays, and let's help each other through the week to see that. But yes, as I understand it, you can. One of the reasons why we selected it is because, one, it would give notifications, as all apps do, and two was that you could tag people, and three was that you could hashtag, so that conversations were categorized according to the platform or to the particular weeks. So let's see how we run with that, mate. All right. Now we've got a quarter of an hour left, so I'll just try and get through these as best I can, because they're all different. I can't really categorize them, unfortunately. All right. Hi, Darren. Do some of the modules, geography, water, touch on elements or are similar to natural sequence farming? Peter Andrews' approach. That's a great question. Thank you, Lachlan Fegans. One of the points I'd make there is that the Regrarians platform is really a methodology about methodologies. And so what we mean by that is that, so Peter Andrews' natural sequence farming would fit particularly into both the geography and water layers, but and so it would be a tool that one might use if it was attractive to you, and if it seemed like it was the best place to have that considered. So yeah, so that's so if you see in your landscape that natural sequence farming would be a good fit, then definitely we see it as being a really valid methodology, and in the unpublished water chapter, which I'll make sure you guys all get a copy of what we've done so far, because we've done this latest version of the Regrarians Handbook, and in that, is it going to die on me again? Yeah, it did that before. I'll just open this up again, just bear with me. In this latest version that Andrew and I have just done, we haven't quite finished the latest chapter, about 3/4 there or so. What we did was added on the bits of the water chapter that we've done, so I'll make sure you all get a copy of that. So in the water layer, what we're looking at is regulatory frameworks, catchment hydro. I'll just make that a bit bigger, sorry. Catchment hydrology, quality and quantity control, sources, treatment and storage, reticulation, irrigation, fire protection, restoration. That's the development of the water layer. Now, part of that is, I think I've got it here, is understanding all of the keyline layers of water, but also, oh no, to be continued. I thought I had it in there. Also was an understanding about what a functional landscape actually looks like, what a functional agricultural landscape looks like. And so I've got a bit of a diagram there which can help with that. And that's in large part informed by the work of Peter Andrews. So definitely a part of where we're going. All right. Next question, and this one's from Pedro Serpa. Welcome, Pedro. Or Pedro. Is the order of the planning process directly related to a preferred order of implementation? Great question. I would say there that what we're looking at is trying to understand well, I'll go back. This program will help you to understand what should come first, and that's why we've got 20% of the program. If I go back to the program here, is spent on prioritization, and those last 2 weeks are really about us saying, all right, well, we've developed our concept plan, we've done all of this work up to date, we've got our holistic context developed, and it's been further developed, and now we come to deciding what's going to come first. And like I said in the presentation earlier, sometimes that might be just building some water infrastructure and some fencing infrastructure, because that's what you need to do, and doing a bit of job on our marketing. Yeah. So really, when we apply the Regrarians platform, it's applied in 2 ways, which is why your question is so good. It's applied in that, one, it takes us through and helps us to understand as many things as we should understand about where we're going and what our property can do and all of the rest of it. And secondly is then, well, now we've come out of that process, now we go, okay, well, what are we actually going to do? Yes, we do need to, in most cases, water infrastructure needs to be dealt with, so we will deal with that. Most people are going to need to, if you've got a livestock property, it's probable that you will have to improve your fencing systems and so on. So there's definitely an order that is there, but it's really going to relate to your particular context as we determine, and that's why, again, we go through the process that we do. I spent a fair bit of time thinking about this program, and trying to get that nexus between, all right, well, how would I deliver the consultation that I've always loved to deliver but never been able to because it would have cost too much. So I'm pretty confident that what we've done with this particular model will do just that. So and that will then help us to help you with us to determine what you should do first. So thank you for a great question. Next one is from Karen in Spain. Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you. We're really excited too. And well, let's see what if we can help your little farm. Okay. Next question is from Javier Galindo. Welcome, Javier. The rhythm of design is marketed by the end of. Yeah, sorry. You might want to repeat that question just so I understand it better, please, Javier. That would be great. Okay, next one. This one's from Griffin Hope in Chile, one of the Regrarians team members and host of with his wife Javiera of the Rex Chile last year. Welcome. Where does the Regrarians platform as a process fit into longer-term farm design, planning, and management cycles? It's a really good question. Of course, Griff. I think in terms of revisiting, so I think our main question with the Regrarians platform is that it really is a planning tool above and beyond, a planning and a farm planning tool above all else. I haven't given a huge amount of thought into management cycles per se, but particularly, that said, I mean, management is informed by planning. And so if you were to come in and it's like a holistic context, you should be revisiting what your holistic context is every year or two, because that's something that's quite constitutional. And planning is a constant, design and planning. So design informs planning, which then informs management. I would suggest use the platform so that you check that you have something that will be holistic in what you check in on, if that makes sense. So yeah, thank you for a great question. Okay, another good one to come. Thank you to Salvador. Welcome. Hola, can you clarify what would be the first tasks for this week? What we're going to look at this week, I'll just so I'm not speaking off the choir sheet here. I think I want. I have to go to the course. I have to go through all of that again. Sorry about this. Just get in there. Start a course. Da, da, da. The task work this week, if I recall, is to basically have an extension of the conversation that we've got going on here. So reflect on each layer and their order of sequence. Consider for yourself how each layer is being applied at your property, and discuss in the weekly forum any thoughts on its application. So, it's more or less an extension of what we've been doing here. I just want you to become a lot more clear. I mean, the Regrarians platform is the basis to our planning approach. So I'd love it if we could all be really clear on what it all means and how it can be applied in your case, because as many have already found, it's a very powerful tool. So thank you for a great question. Thanks, Taj, for thanking me. Okay. Next one here is from Marco. Thank you, Pianalto. Thank you, Marco. Hi, could you just say a few more words on why you would put animals in the forestry layer, and does that include wildlife? I personally link it a lot to the fencing layer. Thanks. Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those because animals are ultimately part of a forest. And so when we look at, and it's a, you know, it links back to the question that was posed before about the other scales of permanence that have been put out there over time. In that, when you look at, let me just go back to them again. Is it there? No, further up. When we look at the other scales of permanence, they've looked at vegetation and wildlife, plant systems. So in the permaculture one, there was nothing. In Jackie and in Dave and Eric's, there was vegetation and wildlife. For me, you know, a forest is not just the trees. It's definitely includes wildlife, wild systems, or wild animals, and it also includes domesticated animals. All of the domesticated animals that we have from a forest, so why not include them as part of a forestry configuration? And so that's why we've included it in that layer. So yeah, that's why. Of course, though, when it comes to managing those animals, we will build infrastructure to support them, and part of that is a forest infrastructure in shelter belts or savannas or whatever configuration you decide is appropriate for you. But then you've got the fencing systems that will help to support them. But then you've got that management over all of those livestock and the whole system, which is carried out by the within the soils layer. So great question, thank you. Next one, this one's from Ella McHenry. Thank you, Ella. Good that you could be here. And once we have made a farm map with keyline features marked out, will we be able to get feedback on it? Yeah, well, absolutely. That's the whole objective of this program, is that it's a high feedback environment, which I think is super exciting. And this is, I've kind of equated this program to, you know, like in, particularly in the US, you know, they've had that tradition of building barns. You know, the community comes together to build a barn. Well, this is where we all come together and help to build each other's farm plans. It's a very similar sort of program. So yeah, thank you. That's what we're looking to do. And of course, you know, we're all going to be primarily focusing on our own projects. But if you do have time and you are interested and you are able, then certainly go and have a look and give feedback on what other people are doing. But yeah, that's the job of myself and the Regrarians team over the next 10 weeks, is to provide you feedback. So yeah, that's why you paid us to do this. So thank you. Yep, got that. That's all good. This is from Mike Bird again. Thanks, Mike. The book resource that you were referencing a short while ago, called something like, yeah, sorry to be a little slow. Yeah, I haven't sent this. This is actually it's the Regrarians Handbook. Andrew and I, because I've been so slow in finishing that book, the next chapter, he said, oh, why don't I put it all together and then you can send this out to people. So yeah, so what I've done here, or what Andrew's done, is compiled into one master the climate and geography book, chapters of the Regrarians Handbook, with the completed sections of the water chapter, which are, well, the ones that are ready for publishing. You can see there's a ton to go. It's a monster chapter, my goodness. So yeah, no worries there, mate. All right. And I might just stop questions now if I can, because we're at 2 hours, and so I need to put a limit on something. So we'll stop with the last question by Rupert. Thank you. And I'll just get through these quickly before we close things up. Asks, can you share some thoughts about incremental growth in systems that have access to capital to be invested short-term in design efficiency? We don't want to be hasty, but we want to be as efficient as possible. What a great question, and it's one. It's one that we work with so commonly. Is so many people have just got this little nest egg or little pile of capital or borrowings or whatever that they've got. Where should it be placed best? And that's again why this program. And I'm really glad that you've asked this question, because it really ties directly into why I've designed this program in the way I have. Because I want people to be really clear. I mean, I value capital so much that, especially those of all of you, but especially those of you who've scrimped and saved for years and years and years to go and buy that farm, and then you get there and then you get advice and the advice is bad and you're struggling for the rest of the time. You're sort of in that catch-up mode. That just drives me insane. Fortunately, I mean, those years of me being one of those people who was a big spending developer type designer, over a decade before me now. In fact, 15 years or so. It was in the 90s when I was doing that, because I just didn't have the holistic basis to my program back then. But these days, yeah, man, we're trying to talk people out of spending money as much as anything else. So it's really important that we work out what's going to give us the best bang for buck. And again, to keep harping on about it, the holistic management framework for decision making gives us a really sound basis for doing that, in that we're asking the right questions, and questions that don't normally get asked. So when I look at, and that's why it's such a big part of this program, when I look at the holistic management framework, we will be looking at those questions of cause and effect. Are we working on the best weak link? Social, biological, financial. What's the marginal reaction? So, are we getting best bang for buck? How does it fit in the gross profit? Energy, money, is it the best use, or of that energy and money, which is coming to your question. What's the source of that money? Are we sort of working on a pattern of use which is not advisable? How sustainable is the decision, and what's the effect on society and culture? Those are the sorts of things that we'd love to just inculcate into the thinking there, Sam, so that yeah, it's always, what are those first triggers to pull? So what we'll certainly be doing our best to help you with that. And I mean, again, we've got an enormous amount of expertise, not only within the Regrarians team, but also, I'm sure, I know some of the people that are involved in this course or in this program, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot of really great advice that comes and experience that comes as well. So yeah, great question. Thank you. I don't know anything about, this is from Sam. Oh, sorry, from Peter Alamang. Thank you, Peter. I don't know anything about Slack. I'm assuming I just Google it and sign under it. And yeah, I think that's probably not a bad way to start. There should have been, I'll just see if I can dig that up for you. Just bear with me for a moment. There should have been probably got all kinds of messages there telling me I couldn't get on this morning, so I'll just get back to that in a minute. Smillian, where are you? There. Now, he sent this invitation here. I'll just grab that. So I'll just pop that in the answer here, send to all. So that should be an invitation that you all got, and I'll just pop that here as well, so it's in here. It's recorded, and you can grab that whenever you need to, if you want to copy that or type it all out. So we'll just have to run with it, as I said before. Okay, next question is from, oh, go away. remove. Um, Hey Darren, do you advise, and this is from Ryan Main, thank you Ryan, do you advise on specific crops and species? Yeah, all the time. That's part of it, and again, I'll be leveraging all of those who are on this platform to have us to, on this program to have us all give that advice. Think of yourselves potentially as all being consultants to each other. If you've got the time outside of what you're doing for yourself, I mean, you're consulting. You're effectively learning how to become your own farm planning consultant with advice from some others, with some bit of mentorship from others. So, but yes, definitely. So during the week, during the weeks while you're here, and then thereafter, I mean, when you're part of the Regrarians network, which you will get opened up to. People ask those sorts of questions all the time. All right. Okay, and this one's from Jenny Cato. Thanks, Jenny. Welcome. Sorry you couldn't do the Rex up at Helen's. There's a few people here who couldn't do that, Helen and Ian, so it's great that you're able to here. I suppose selfishly it's a good thing too because you'll concentrate on your own property. So you mentioned planting trees in quality holes. Will you explain your tree planting method? Not right now, I won't. But we do have a few YouTubes which are in the works. I've got some already. We're just putting a top and tail on those, and they'll be out there. But yeah, during the week we can certainly talk about that, and I can share some resources. We don't actually have, as you would have seen in the program, we don't actually have a session where we're talking about tree planting. This is, you know, we're doing the work on deciding whether it's actually a necessary part of your output at this stage first before we actually get to the stage of planting any. Okay, so thanks for that. And Rebecca, hi Darren, I acknowledge the lineage you followed for the 10 parts of the Regrarian platform. Were there any features that came close to being included but have been left out? If so, what were they? Yeah, great question. As I was having a conversation with Javan Banakovic about the Regrarians platform recently, there hasn't. I would have actually liked it if I'd had a few more people write to me and ask those sorts of questions. I've had a couple of people say, "Oh, I would have put this before this," or, you know, change the order and that sort of thing. I've also had a few people say, "Oh, where's the community part and where's the people part?" And so I've said, "Well, they're in climate, you know, and so on." So in the operations of this and in the however many trainings that we've done using the platform, oh, excuse me, it's sort of proved to me that it's pretty solid. That said, it's not fixed, and I've yet to be convinced that but that said, I've yet to be convinced that there's any changes in the way, or that would come close to being included or left out, as you put it. But I'd love for people to give me their thoughts. You know, we're here to learn from everyone who's using this platform and who are in this space and care. So thank you, Rebecca. Okay, next question, which is about the program, and this is from Lauren Morales. Thank you, Lauren. Welcome. Our weekly schedule lists review task work and midweek. What does this consist of, and is it a live session? No. What you get to do there, I'll just go back to the. So each week you've got your task work, which is listed, which will be listed in the weekly work task. When you do that, so for this week there won't be anything to submit unless you've got an essay or something like Rebecca might want to come up with a whole new Regrarians platform or changes or whatever. I'm only being facetious, Rebecca, of course. But for each of the weeks that are to come, you will go through the work tasks, and then you will upload them. So for this next week here, where we've got week 2, what you'll go in your Google Drive and you'll upload. So you'll create a document, There'll be a template in there for you to start with, and so you'll download that, fill it out, well, actually, no, it'll be in there as a template. You'll fill it out and then make it your own and put your name on it, and then it'll be installed in there. So that's it. There's no live weekly work tasks. The work tasks, though, are supported by the forum during the week. So the idea is that we do the weekly live one, which is where we introduce where we have a facilitated conversation. Facilitator delivers some sort of presentation. Then we have the Q&A after. Then we have the week of discussion in the forums, and then we have another live session, which is an open Q&A to sort of recapture. But before that, you will have submitted your work, and then we'll do the weekly Q&A, which is an open forum, as I said, and then we'll start. And then a couple of days later, we do the next week, and so that's going to be your program for the next 10 weeks. Sorry to say. Okay, hope that answers your question. If not, just check in with us on the forum during the week. Okay, we'll go back to here, and just to confirm, is the weekly task to read and fully understand the Regrarians platform? Yeah, that's from Dan Cordner. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, just read through it, understand it, talk about it. This goes back to what Rebecca said, you know, let's just have a conversation about the Regrarians platform and how it fits for you, and what do you think? How will it work for you? And so on. Yeah, so I think that that goes forward to Kendall Clark. Thank you for coming along, Kendall, for being a part. Will you be setting homework today? Yes, so the homework for today is, or the task work, I'm not calling it, I don't like the word homework because I never did any, is weekly work task. Reflect on each layer and their order of sequence. Consider how each layer is being applied at your property and discuss all of this and the platform this week in the forum. That would be where we're at. Timothy Edmund, now you've got your next. Oh, there you go. Where is the link for the Regrarians handbook? Thank you, Timothy, because I think you were the last person to enroll. You may have slipped through the link there, but we'll make sure that you get, I'll just make a written note here that you don't miss out. I think because you weren't able to go through the booking site because we'd closed it, you would have missed out on the automated email which sent that link. So I'll make a note here to make sure you get a copy. Okay, RHB. All right, so you're taken care of. Thank you. No worries, Dan. I'll ignore your question. Okay. Okay. So seeing this is from Rupert. Thank you, Rupert. Seeing the unavailable chapters of the ebook is such a tease. Well, all we've done is we've got it available, so you will get that there. Any idea on when future chapters will be released? I think, as I talked about during one of the information sessions, the Regrarians handbook project came to a halt because we just ran out of cash. So it's an expensive project. Andrew is an oyster farmer on the south coast of New South Wales, and so he needs to be supported. We've got 6 of us that need to be supported. None of that's cheap in a country like Australia, even though we live fairly cheaply. So, and for me to do the job properly requires my full attention. So that means no other work. So yeah, we've now that you guys have been good enough to support us, we'll be able to get back on that program. I'm also pleased to say that Georgie Pavlov will be coming in and helping me as well. Georgie's a really great writer and researcher, and that's a really big part of the workload with generating the Regrarians handbook. Anybody who's seen it could see that it's not just a matter of writing words. There's a lot of diagrams. There's a lot of it's a tremendous amount of rechecking and just trying to make it so that it's right. Because we don't want to put materials out there because we know that when you write these things that people will follow them and use them and spend money following them, and so we feel a really deep responsibility to making sure that the materials we produce are as accurate as they can be. So that takes time. So, but we've also got the practical realities of running a family. So, so yeah, we'll be back at it when the next chapter will be water chapter. I would hope that it will be done by the end of this year, if not earlier. Yeah, because it's pretty close. I've just got to devote the time, but I'm not going to be able to while I'm doing this Rex for the next 10 weeks. That is for certain. So we'll see how September and October go. All right. And second last question. The book resource that you were referencing a short time ago called something like Climate and Geography Master. Sorry to be a bit slow, but I can't. Yeah, we will. Thanks, Mike. I think you've sent that again. So yeah, we'll send that out to you. And lastly, yep, thank you to Blake for sharing that that link. Oh, there's a few there. Walter, off to bed, Mike. Yes, good work, mate. Enjoy, and we'll look forward to catching up during the week. No worries. We'll send you, Walter, if you haven't got that link. I'll send that to you. I think I know why there. Now I see your name, so there's a reason. Will the future chapters be available to us, or will you need to buy them? Yeah, you'll need to buy them, Angus, so thank you for that question. I'll just pop that up. Yeah, it's an expensive project. We're probably going to need to do a Kickstarter to finish it off, so that we get it, so we can spend the time that we need to. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a paid for publication, especially in a hard copy. It's yeah. So. And John, last question, is it? Oh, a couple more. Last questions. John Stupica, I will need a link also since I was submitted with a team. No worries, John. I'll put your name down as well. So thank you. Again, if any of you have got any of those sort of questions, just send us an email or a Facebook message, and we'll do what we can. We'll put it on the Slack, and so we can all hear about it. Yep, and I've got Salvador as well. Thank you very much. And last question, is it? Yes, from Blake. Is there a private Facebook page for the program? Well, no, Blake, there isn't, because when we did a survey of many of you, which many of you kindly responded to, and about 25% of you said you don't use Facebook. So with that, I decided to not use Facebook as the primary forum page through the week. Again, I will see how Slack goes for us. If it proves to be difficult, too difficult, or whatever for people, you know, one of the reasons why Facebook works is because it works and it's easy, relatively easy and accessible. It's just that 25% of you have said you don't use it. So it's either we use something else, or those 25% of you create a quiet profile that you don't use and join the Facebook page, private Facebook group, and we go from there. So that's where we're at. All right. And last question from Rebecca before this will be the last. Is it a good idea for all of us to be thinking more about the big content related questions now live and leave the tech admin questions to the forum offline? I think so, but by the same token, this kind of live off-the-cuff sort of Q&A is also useful, but you know, if we need to provide resources and all of those sorts of things, you know, like some of those questions, like I'll go back up to the one that Piang asked, and someone else, I think it was Kim, about asking about water volume and that sort of thing. They're questions that are really best for the forum offline, so that we can apply the appropriate amount of attention to them and resource. All right, well, with that, I'm going to thank you all very much for your patience this morning and for enjoying it, and also thanks to the panel for answering a number of the questions as well. It's been really helpful. My apologies to folks for who couldn't get on because of the limits that were placed. I'll address that immediately I'm done here, and pay a bit more money so that we can get more of you on, and look forward to catching up with you through the week. Get on Slack and give that a go so that we can see how that all works. And please, let's really put in and enjoy and get the most out of this very exciting experience. I'll certainly be putting in, I know our team will as well. So I really look forward to interacting with you all over the coming 10 weeks and beyond. All right. Well, with that, I'll bid you good morning, and thank you very much. Good day.
What happened?